What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team. All right, we are back in action. Rhomas Men's Team, pretty simple. We help each other reach each other's goals as men. Mr. Ray, what's going on, brother? Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, man. I'm doing okay. I'm like, I don't know, without my scorecard, I'm grumpy as hell. I've noticed that last couple of days. So, yeah, this morning woke up grumpy, or just evolved into a grumpy mood real quick. And just connecting to someone in the brotherhood, drinking some water, sending the act of love, a couple other things like that really helped to chill me out.
Heck yeah, man. When I'm off my scorecard, just something's off. You know, I know Ray and I have talked about it 1,000 times, but like doing the baseline things a man should do every day, that are in the scorecard, helps reset everything. And I'm kind of like a monkey. Like I need, or as Coco Chanel said, like men are coin operated. I just need simplistic ways of being and simplistic ways of winning and making the game black and white. And scorecard helps me get that for sure. Ray, I wanted to talk to you. I watched this show, or part of this show. It's called Made, on Netflix. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I'm watching it with my girlfriend right now, and it's really hitting home with me. I think the writers did an excellent job, and it's about this basically like single mom. She chooses to leave her child's father once he, abuses her in a certain emotional way and threatens her physically, etc. But it's just unbelievably accurate. You know, the chaos resonates a lot with me, and it got me thinking about what you did last week with, you were arguing with somebody last week, and you just wouldn't let the seed of chaos grow into, a weed that takes over the entire garden, if that makes sense. And that is incredibly difficult to do. But Ray, I want to talk to you about that today. What is your thought on, as a man, it is part of your job to absorb a certain amount of chaos and not let it spread all over the land?
100% agree, Wes. And the scorecard today is part of what we're talking about, right? Where I am not emotionally resilient if I don't do my scorecard, right? So, for example, I took my mom to meet a friend of ours who's a stockbroker. And so I had to sit down with my mom and him in a coffee shop, while she tried to figure out how to pull up her stock portfolio on her phone. And like every time he made a suggestion, she was like, "Oh, okay, I'll do that." So like, you should probably sell everything. Okay, I'll do that. No, you should probably hold on to 50%. Okay, I'll do that. And paying down credit card. Okay, I'll do that. And so like it would, and I could only tell my mom to shut the hell up a certain amount of times before people would look at me as the bad guy. The good guy says shut the hell up sometimes, Wes. Okay?
Yeah.
So how do I bring this back to the Made show? Well, we're talking about being emotionally resilient, right? So that debacle that we talked about on Friday, was it? Or that you witnessed, or that you heard, right? We had another one on Saturday where it's like...
Can I describe to everybody?
And we have another one on Sunday, but go ahead.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Ray and I, before we hopped on here live, Ray was sitting down in a house and was about to record, but somebody interrupted him, and there was a conflict in schedule, and that particular person didn't seem too happy about it. And so Ray kind of like turned everything off, but I was still listening because I was waiting to go on live, and just hearing him navigate and didn't allow the argument to just to become a decibel match. I can scream louder than you, and so on. And just kept on throwing out objective truth, and solutions, and then ultimately figured out a better path. So anyway, that was what happened on Friday. But apparently there was some follow up bouts.
And it's really the same. It's the same thing over and over again. Where um, for the last 24 years, I was led to believe that I was the chaos agent, right?
Mm,
But now that we're separated, like I'm able to. It's a lot clearer that like when we have an agreed upon scheduled child visitation issue, for example, she's the one who changes it, and it's on a daily basis. Same thing happened Saturday where we were going to go to a birthday party, and then it was like, oh my god, I had planned a play date with one of her friends and their parents in order to meet my new boyfriend. This is rolling out the new boyfriend, and she had put it in the calendar on the wrong day, and so that was a conflict. And of course, it was like I'm allowed to have a boyfriend, like like it was like the chaos and the error scheduling was my fault because I'm all of a sudden trying to control her or something, right? And then Sunday, so daughter wakes up and she's like, "Yesterday was so much fun, Daddy. I want to hang out with you again today." Mommy steps in and she's like, "No, Daddy you can hang out with her on Wednesday now." So this was the third day in a row of this bullshit. And what did I do? I didn't
well,
fly off the handle. I hung up, and I was just kind of fuming and swirling for about 20 minutes. Then I realized that, oh, Sarah's going out of town Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So actually, this will be the only full day she gets to spend with her. So I forgave the chaos and just did the reasonable thing, which was let her have this day because I'm going to get a full 3 extra days. But not responding, no, not reacting, not lashing out on the Sunday chaos episode. I felt good because like after about 15 minutes, I realized that a reasonable person would allow the change in schedule, right? So I didn't see the value of getting in a fight and then allowing the change in schedule.
right.
Do you know what I mean? And so I was really proud of myself because like I was able to go from furious to um, to cool down without spraying the whole place with bullets.
Right. How do you hedge then against that type of behavior in the future?
Well, Wes, like when we get into an emotional conflict, like sometimes we want to spray the room with bullets, right? This can happen obviously at a post office or a high school, haha. But no, but like with colleagues and romantic partners, right, where we want to explode with rage or just kind of like raise our voice or whatever. And I don't know, Wes. It's like, well, I'll turn it back on you. How do you not fly off the handle when you've been pushed to the limit and you're asked to do something? Or maybe, you know what? Again, there's so many other things going on when people get into a fight. Like, let's say in the calm serenity of this conversation, what would be your recommendation to someone who has a rough day and then they're either romantic partner or colleague or some kind of relationship uh, has a request or a demand that pushes them to the limit?
Well, so this is what I do. It's also probably what I recommend not doing. Well, I guess I would say proceed at your own risk. So I, maybe to a fault, use too many business tactics or strategies in interpersonal relationships. So but so anyway, but I'll just be truthful in what I do. So I tend to, if there's repeated chaos, I will write letters and listicle form, dude. Right? Like, and these things are killers. So it's like, hey, I didn't freak out at you at the time. In fact, all of the times that you've been doing this, but here are the 8 things, right, that are my concern. And then I don't want to overwhelm you, but if you need support, and this is real, right? I've done this on many occasions. If you need support of any one of these 8 things, I've included, right, attachments with great detail, right? So it's like, here are the patterns that I believe are dysfunctional in the thing that we are trying to do. So here are the 8 patterns. If you don't believe me, and to save on time of back and forth, right? If you need more air quotes evidence, they are included in the 20-page document. And this is, this sounds ridiculous, but this is a real thing, right? I promise you, this is a real thing, because it's like, I've already done the thinking for you, right? I've already experienced this, and I'm not saying this to hurt you, but what I'm telling you is this is a dysfunctional pattern. If you need more evidence, just refer to page 34 or whatever, right? Um, and also, please do not, like, I'm not, the reason I'm giving this to you in letter form is to spare us the back and forth and the red herring distractions on, yeah, but you do this and you do this. You can write your own letter and send it and give it back to me, and then we can talk. And then I've put these things in grid form because, as you know, Ray, like when you get into arguments, especially in interpersonal relationships, it tends to go in this like just echo chamber feedback mechanism. And it's like, no, we've already discussed this point. You've already been proven wrong on this, right? Like we need to ground ourselves in some sort of objective reality, right? Um, and while I can say that that is not short term uh, fun, I do think it's long term effective because the other party knows, right? Like you're not going to mess with this guy. It's just not going to happen. But then here's the cool thing: well, it forces you to think through those types of conflict, and also will shine light on what you did erroneously throughout those patterns. But here's the cool thing: if you've written these letters enough, you then behave with the letter in mind. So you don't do those things that would end up in a document one day, right? It's like, okay, no, this is what you did. This is how I reacted. This is what you did. This is how I reacted. What you did was completely unreasonable. What I did was reasonable. Prove me wrong, right? And Ray, what you did on Friday, completely reasonable. So that letter will be documented. Hey, this is what happened. It was a conflict in schedule because of you, not you, Ray, the other person. You did this incorrectly, and that's okay. But that's an objective fact. And the way that I handled your arrows being thrown at me was I put out solutions. You didn't seem willing that you were open to any of those solutions. So then I just left. Great. Right. And then you did the same thing on Saturday. And then you did the same thing on Sunday. But when you act with the letter in mind, it allows you to walk away with respectability. Right. And when they say being esteemable, right? So I don't know, man. When you put that level of thought and that level of clarity and reverse engineer the final destination, I think you can walk with a lot of integrity and respect around, like in your own head.
Hell yeah, I didn't know where you were going with sliding the 20-page document across the table to your girlfriend, but um,
No,
I
by the way,
totally
I'm saying to anybody, to any, like
I know.
this works incredibly well in business, like
Yeah.
incredibly well in business. It's just applied over into interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you in the end, in the final analysis. What you said at the end, people with high self-esteem do esteemable acts, right? So there is a self-esteem gain that occurs from this plan, right? If indeed um, you think twice before acting selfishly,
Yep.
right? If the dishwasher or the kitchen being dirty and the dishes in the sink are like a constant source of friction for you and um, your whether it's roommate or girlfriend or boyfriend. Um, by preparing this document, maybe hopefully you'll think twice before you let the dishes pile up, right? That's an esteemable act, and as a result, you can walk with your head held high when when this conflict flares up again. So I 100% agree with that. Uh, Another angle that I'd like to approach on this one, Wes, is like, what do you do if your colleague or your spouse is like pathological about whether it's creating chaos or loading the dishwasher uh, in a kind of like illogical way or whatever it is, you know? Uh, like how do you kind of like harmonize the two where this behavior drives you crazy, but you don't think it rises to the level of a breakupable offense?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think so. That's what John Gottman calls gridlock, right? I believe, right? Where essentially you kind of reach, what do they say in that Batman movie? Like when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, sort of a thing. Um, I think, right, that's where rationality really plays a big role, in my opinion, of when you don't. First of all, I don't think it makes sense to retaliate because I think that's where the human emotion wants to go. Like, okay, great, don't do the dishwasher. Then I'm just going to burn your clothing, right, or whatever. Right, like, I'm going to make sure that when I wash your clothing, I'm not going to do it correctly, or whatever, to kind of balance the equation. So I don't think retaliation, although that's the emotional, probably gut reaction, it should not be the thing. Um, I think this is where rationality really plays a role. I don't know how to articulate it, Ray. Maybe you can give me the words, but I think there's a difference between a threat and what I will do as a result of something, like of a need not being met. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to assume that if it's a situation where it's not a deal breaker, then at the end of the day, it just has to be articulated to the partner. And as maybe as much of a sissy as you might sound, it's like, hey, I've asked you multiple times to do this, and you're not doing it. And this just makes me unhappy. This just makes me sad, and that's like it doesn't seem like you're willing to solve this problem. And honestly, I'm not willing to leave you over it, right? Because that would be ridiculous. We have a child or whatever the situation is, But so just know that every time that happens, like I'll be sad, and that's my own self work, and maybe I can fix that in the future, or maybe I can't. But that's where we are. I think Ray, this goes back to a pattern that you and I have talked about a while ago, which is like sometimes the answer is just be sad and leave it there. Like some now, I do think the ratio is really important. I think this should happen very rarely, but it's just rational to conclude that yeah, there are just certain situations where you just are left with negative feelings.
100% agreed. There, like the expression "you got to pick your battles" comes to mind, right? Where you know, infidelity and dishwasher etiquette are not like do not require the same response,
one Hundred
right? And
percent.
so like and so I guess yeah, and that gets back to like the dispute or whatever you want to call it that you listened to on Friday, where proportionate response is required, right? And when there's so much emotional baggage in a relationship, I would argue that typically um, the nuclear option is what we go for, not proportionate response, right? It's either like you always do this, or
Yep.
um, your father used to act like this, and look how he turned out, or something. I don't know if
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I mean, or your mother or your father always do this. I don't know if you ever get that grenade hurled at you, but uh, yeah. So then there must be a doctrine of proportionate response that we need to kind of abide by, live by, if we're going to um, keep a level head in these kind of discussions. And does a written document with 20 pages of exhibits, does that violate the doctrine of proportionate response?
So this is where I know a lot of people would disagree with me. However, I think it's incredibly effective because number one, I would say 80% of the time where I write those documents, they don't need to be delivered because it allows me to sort of like therapeutically resolve right in myself. Dude, it's crazy, right? Ray, let me ask you this: have you ever written a letter, right? Like as saying as an attorney or as a scientist, but right, like going through the logic step by step in your own head. Here's what happened. Here's what I did. Here's what you did. Here's how I felt. Here's how I can imagine you feel. Right. Here's why I think it's functional or dysfunctional. Have you ever done that? Like really thoroughly?
Um, yeah, I must have done it at some point, but I don't do it often enough because I know the power of writing something and not sending it. Just writing it for my own to assist in my own digestion. You know,
Yep.
so for example, uh, ex-spouse wants me to interact with her boyfriend. I said no, thank you. Not ready to have a relationship with him. And so she said, fine, we'll do this. We'll make this kind of arrangement if to exchange the child if you don't dare lay eyes on my boyfriend. And so the response, so that is kind of like um, a PA, as Matt and Shane would call it, right? A personal attack or whatever, right? That's kind of like escalating the rhetoric a little bit.
Yep.
Um, and so I typed out, "I'm not in the mood for your jokes today." And then I erased that, right? Because, and then my daughter saw me erasing a text. And she asked me, "Why'd you do that?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to say something to mommy, but I wrote it out and I thought it wouldn't help, so I deleted it." And she's like, "Yeah, when you wrote it out, that was the alcohol talking. That was just that kind of like, which I thought was hilarious that she said that. That was that kind of like, what would a drunk person who flies into a rage do?
Yeah.
Uh, um, I mean, my 12-year-old daughter is really wise in the ways of like the imperfect construction of the human mind and ego. But so by writing it and then erasing it, I was able to off gas those feelings. And also, again, what we're talking about, when I'm on my best days, in my best moments, I can elect not to react, right? And combust,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's the small way in which I experience that kind of benefit of writing something out to aid my digestion. It's like a kind of like Imodium in a letter, right? It like aids my digestion, prevents mental diarrhea, and um, and does not kind of escalate the situation.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
Right? Or
Yep. I
like
mean,
it does not accept the invitation to um, escalate the situation.
yeah. I mean, I think you and I have had similar experiences, right? Whether it be right a simple sentence or two in a text message, which, by the way, a simple tool to help with that because text can be so quick, right, and feel so good, right? Just to offload some hand grenades. Writing it in another notes app on your phone, right? Just the simple, like literally just the simple, like you're putting one more click of the button versus like a copy and paste over into text. Sometimes there's just enough buffer to be like, maybe I should reword that, I had to do this actually recently for a piece of business situation. I would say, Ray, that there's a difference. Number one, I would recommend everybody who's listening, when you have conflict, write it out, right? I've never had a conflict where I said, oh, you know what? I wish I did not sleep on that. So every time I've slept on it and wrote through my thoughts and then did different filters through the writing, put the writing through different filters. One of those filters being, as Tim Ferriss calls it, minimum effective dose, right? What's the minimum effective critique, right? And then how can you neutralize and soften the language as much as possible, but not so much that it dilutes the meaning, right? Because I do think there's a risk there if you communicate in a way that's so diluted where it doesn't land on the other side. They don't even know what you've given them nothing to actually change behavior with. I think that's a problem. So writing things out, number one, I think you will reduce 85 to 95% of your conflict because you'll realize, right, that you were either thinking about it erroneously or, right, just like what Ray's saying, it allows you to expel the toxic energy or whatever you want to call it, and then you're good and you can move on. But then the 20% that do go through, put it through multiple filters so that it helps you, like Jordan Peterson says, to get laser sharp with your tongue, right? Remove all the excess. And this is what Ray is incredible at. Just remove the excess. Say it in a precise way and say it so accurately and use analogies that can help communicate your emotion so that it lands on the other person's side, knowing how important it is to you. Ray, what's your perspective on that?
Thank you for the compliment, Wes. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a genius when it comes to language precision every day, I assure you. But that is I suppose that is one of the bundle of talents that God blessed me with. Um, Now that I think about it, like journaling is on the scorecard.
Oh, yeah.
For a reason.
Yep.
Right? For this very reason. It helps us, it aids in the digestion. It's like a vitamin. You know what I mean? It's like a scientific kind of performance enhancing drug that has proven to kind of steady the ship. So 100% writing is, I mean, it is something I should have been doing all weekend, or it is probably something I should be doing consistently through this divorce, or for anyone who's getting fired or finds themselves unemployed for the first time in a while, or whatever other transition or conflict, or broken up with, or a romantic relationship that isn't working anymore, or that 1 week out of the month where she's on her period and it's just a shark attack 7 days straight. I think, I think writing is an outstanding way of off-gassing the toxic feelings, or that you want to slap back in their face when they slap it in yours, right? And I think this can be distinguished from being a coward or being a mouse, or right, because mousy behavior or cowardly behavior doesn't come with a self-esteem boost, right? It robs you of self-esteem, right? Cowardly behavior is not esteemable behavior. That's different than picking your battles. That's different. So I think the journaling and the writing these things out is part of the, again, it is a self-esteem building tool. And Eureka, I don't know why we didn't describe it in these terms in the first place. That writing is a self-esteem building tool, right? If you find yourself with low self-esteem, which we all do at different times in our life, some of us are plagued with it since birth. Some of us have it in elementary school or high school. Some of us have it into adulthood. Most of us have it in a cyclical way when, and so absolutely writing is the medicine for that. when things don't go our way, when the world isn't kind of bending to our needs, I think writing is an outstanding tool for uh, like calibrating yourself back to reality, right? If you feel under attack, if she says you're this, if your employer says you're that, writing it out allows you to kind of take ownership of the places you made an error, and then remind yourself of the qualities you still have. And yeah, so I would say absolutely, um, writing is a self-esteem building or self-esteem restoring act, and it's a tool, and it's in the scorecard for a reason.
Yeah, Ray. I mean, I think to piggyback off of what you're saying, I don't know what analogy would stick with this, but you know how like computer has RAM, RAM, right? I think it's called random access memory. It's like a limited capacity, short-term sort of use. I feel like our mind is like that. It's got a limited capacity in real-time language to be able to articulate, so like multivariable complex situations. So like we need to be able to put it down on paper so you can see the list of 27 items in sequence. Your brain can only handle, let's say, 8 items in sequence. So you tend to like distort these and repeat loops and all these things. Versus when you write it out, you can almost visualize it. And writing, by the way, doesn't just have to be words. It could be drawings, it could be flowcharts, it could be charts, it could be all these things, right? These are tools to help you see a larger picture that your brain just doesn't seem to be able to follow the full thread. Would you agree or disagree with that, Ray? I think you're still on mute, buddy.
Yeah, there's a productivity guru named Dave Allen, like Getting Things Done, GTD, and he says something like the mind is a terrible information retention machine, basically, or he has some kind of language like
Mm.
that where it just gets mixed in the lumpy stew of all your bad memories, good memories, predictions, biases. And so by writing it out, you're able to get it out of that like swamp up there. And again, it can be it's like a kind of like you're when you see it written, you're able to cross-reference it against reality and just be a little more um, cool with reality or accepting of reality, right? So, for example, with the romantic partner or the employer or whoever it might be, or the cop or the person, driving in front of you, right? Like, um, your mind, your emotions, your limbic system, your frontal cortex, and all those different parts of your brain can concoct a total fantasy about what's going on, right? This person in front of me in the car is kind of purposely slowing down to piss me off. It's revenge time. My employer is just planning the right. He's just picking the right moment to fire me. So my job is very insecure. My romantic partner doesn't love me and never loved me, so like the mind, as powerful as a supercomputer as it um, is not always the most useful, like, objective fact recording and reciting machine. And so uh, writing it down, I think, is again, it's that connection between self-esteem and reality, right? Where your emotions and your worries and your fears can be um, strained out of the situation, and you can look at the facts and then kind of like calm down and prepare a response or prepare action. Ideally the the writing down triggers it better prepares you to trigger the correct action.
100%. Let's final topic here because RA put it in the comments. This is probably a pretty common pattern. RA is saying, "Hey, um, my ex-wife found my journal, and it seemed like that was one of the things that put a stake in our marriage. I know several guys that this has happened to, and women that this has happened to. Um, Ray, what is your perspective on that pattern? You write a journal.
Same thing happened to me, dude. Like, if any of us had our DMs and text messages that you exchanged with your buddies read aloud, we'd be fucked. We'd never work again.
Yeah.
Your phone is password protected. Your journal should be too. Hold on to it. It's for you. It is going to be misinterpreted or used against you. If she really wants to know what's going on in your journal, you ask her and you tell her. But those are your you are like we are all entitled to our interior life. You know, like it's only. I'm just trying to think of like in terms of racism and sexism. For example, these kind of radioactive topics. I guess are we entitled to our own our interior life about how we feel about these things now? Or shoplifting, for example. When it comes to our actions, that is where the law steps in, right? But in the realm of ideas, I think that is a protected space that's just for you. And I know obviously we've all been told don't write anything down or type anything out if you're not willing to have it read aloud, but none of us live like that. Yeah, the journal. Um, yeah, it's private property. And maybe Ryan, we can set aside some time so you can show me how to password protect stuff on my phone. I'm too old, and I'm a wise old owl at this point. It might be too late for me, but yeah. Like, and then also think about any time you've looked in someone else's text messages, like a romantic partner or a employer. You don't go in there hoping not to find anything, and you don't
Yep.
stop if you haven't found anything. You keep going till you find something incriminating, and the
Yep.
same thing will be done if your romantic partner opens your journal. It's human nature.
Yeah, no, Ray, you're spot on. Yeah, it's so interesting. I look at looking through a partner's text messages or whatever it is. I mean, it's fool's gold, right? Like the outcome, even if you find nothing, your brain will be like, well, that's because she obviously deleted all of them. Do you know what I mean? It's like the probability of walking away positively from that is almost zero. You know, it's almost zero. Now, I do think when it comes to the breach of journal, number one, obviously, right? You can have a hybrid approach, write in a journal and then burn it or delete it, right? I would argue that you probably got 95% of the therapeutic benefit just from getting it out of your head, you know? Um, and then also the probability of you going back, 10 years from now and reading through all of those is probably close to zero as well. Now, I do understand that there are some people who do that, so I'm not discounting that, but I think relative to the risk, because then to be fair, it leads to a really weird, a difficult argument because on one side, the person could say, well, hey, you committed the foul because you looked into my journal. My hands are clean. I'm done. I'm allowed to be able to process my internal thoughts on paper. It doesn't mean that those thoughts are real. It just means that rather than spending $300 an hour on a therapist, I just go through, right? Like I go through my thoughts on paper. So I'm not saying that any of those are true or valid. It's just what I was thinking at the time. And that is a healthy way of me dealing with my emotions. That's an argument, let's say. Oh, I think Ray just dropped off. Anyway, does anybody have perspective on this? I would love to get your opinion. I'm going to invite one or two up here, but I really it's an interesting dynamic to think through because if you've ever been involved in that, it's really, really difficult. I know what it's like to have something read that's more sacred and that shouldn't, right? That person should have never violated your trust to begin with. But I also know what it's like to learn something that you shouldn't have learned, and now you can't unlearn it. And to be stuck with that without dealing with the person directly, I mean, that's a really tricky situation that I don't know how to rectify. And maybe we just leave it there. Maybe it's one of those topics we revisit because it is really difficult to think of how you would navigate that. It's almost like if, an ex boyfriend or girlfriend reaches out to a person, and the other person like finds out about it, right? Like you may have not complied with, reciprocating or whatever, in response, but it still doesn't stop the person from hurting who found it. Anyway, dudes, some things to ponder this week. Love you guys. I'm going to jet. I got to get ready for my next meeting, and I will talk to you all on Friday. Later.